Biggest names in aviation, building everything from giant passenger jets to advanced military planes. But to see where it all began, we need to go back over a century when aircraft were made out of wood and wire. This is your captain speaking. We're ready for takeoff, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight through the evolution of Boeing. On December 17, 1903, the Wright brothers made history with the first successful airplane, the Wright Flyer. 6 years later, William Edward Boeing saw an aircraft for the first time. He was instantly fascinated. That moment would change his life and the future of aviation forever. In 1916, William Boeing and George Conrad Westervelt founded Pacific Aero Products. That same year, they built their first plane, the B&W seaplane. It was a small two-seater made from wood, linen, and wire. Simple, but ahead of its time. On June 15, 1916, William Boeing flew it himself and named it Bluebill. It flew 306 miles in a single day, setting a new record. When the U.S. entered World War I on April 16, 1917, the Navy came knocking. But there was a problem. America was far behind in aviation. Britain had 400 military planes, Germany had 1,000, France had 1,400, and the U.S. just 23. Luckily, Boeing was prepared. They had improved their designs and renamed the company to Boeing Airplane Company. The Navy ordered 50 Model C trainers, Boeing's first big success. But when the war ended in 1918, the demand vanished. Cheap military planes flooded the market. Most aircraft companies went under. Boeing almost did too. To survive, they built whatever they could. Furniture, small boats, anything to keep going. But they never gave up on flying. On March 3, 1919, the final Model C took off. William Boeing flew it from Vancouver to Seattle, making it the first plane to deliver international airmail to the U.S. With no more demand from the Navy, Boeing shifted its focus to commercial flight. In 1919, the B-1 seaplane took to the skies. It could carry a pilot, 2 passengers, and some mail or cargo. Only one was ever built, but it flew over 350,000 miles, remarkable for its time. But it didn't take long for the military to return. In 1920, Boeing began building 3-winged planes for ground attacks. One of them was the GA-1. It had nearly a ton of heavy armor, 8 machine guns, and a 37mm cannon. But it was too heavy and too slow, so it never saw combat. Then came a new challenge. Boeing entered a competition against Curtiss to design a new fighter for the U.S. Army. In the end, both designs were accepted. Boeing kept refining its PW-9 fighter, which became the fastest plane they had built, reaching 159 miles per hour. Over time, 157 PW-9s were produced in several versions. That kicked off a new chapter. In the years that followed, Boeing became a top fighter plane builder, creating hundreds more, including the P-12 and the F-2B, which rose to fame with the U.S. Navy's aerobatics team, the 3 Seahawks. In 1927, Boeing flew its first passenger, marking the start of its commercial aviation journey. She flew aboard the Model 40, a mail plane built for the U.S. Post Office. It could carry 2 passengers in a small, cramped cabin, a big step at the time. The Model 40 proved a success, with 77 built in total. On July 26, 1928, Seattle opened its first municipal airport, Boeing Field. At the ceremony, William Boeing called it just about the happiest day of my life. The next day, the Boeing Model 80 took flight. Powered by 3 engines, it carried 12 passengers and was among the first planes built for people, not just mail. Fun fact, Ellen Church, a nurse, pitched a bold idea to Boeing: hire women as flight attendants to calm nervous passengers. In 1930, she flew on a Model 80A, becoming the world's first flight attendant. Requirements? Be a nurse, under a certain age and weight, and even unmarried. Boeing thought it made women seem more dedicated and, well, attractive. But then came trouble. In 1929, Boeing helped form a giant aviation empire, owning everything from planes to engines to airlines. It became a monopoly, and the government stepped in. The company was forced to split into 3: Boeing Airplane Company, United Airlines, and United Aircraft. Frustrated, Boeing sold his shares and walked away. When he died in 1956, he didn't own a single share, but left behind a legacy that changed aviation forever. In 1930, Boeing's monomail was revolutionary. Its sleek, all-metal design, low wings, and retractable landing gear made old biplanes feel instantly outdated. It was faster, more aerodynamic, and laid the foundation for many Boeing models to come. The Boeing YB-9 was a giant leap from the monomail, an all-metal bomber with a 76-foot wingspan, built for the U.S. Army. It could carry 2,200 pounds of bombs and fly at 188 miles per hour, fast enough to outrun most fighters of its time. A major step forward, but aviation was evolving fast. In 1932, the P-26 pea shooter took flight, the first all-metal American fighter to enter full production. It outpaced biplanes and became the fastest fighter in the sky. Boeing built 151, and then nothing. They stepped away from fighters for decades. But they weren't done. Their next chapter would rewrite aviation history. The Boeing Model 247 changed air travel forever in 1933. This low-wing, twin-engine plane flew from New York to LA in 20 hours, with 7 stops. That sounds long today, but back then, it was more than 7 hours faster than any other airline. With a cruising speed of 189 miles per hour, the Model 247 ushered in the age of speed, reliability, safety, and comfort for air travel. Then came the Boeing 314, better known as the Clipper. This wasn't just a plane, it was a flying ocean liner. Built for Pan Am, it had a 106-foot wingspan, 4 engines, and a 3,700-mile range, with a cruising speed of 188 miles per hour. It crossed the Atlantic and Pacific days faster than any ship could dream of. For the time, that was insane. And inside, pure luxury. 40 sleeping bunks, private dressing rooms, a dining salon that turned into a lounge, or even a bridal suite. It flew 10 crew and 74 passengers in style. At the time, no other airplane came even close. And the price to fly across the Pacific? $675 back then, over $15,000 today. That's wild. Even President Franklin D. Roosevelt flew on a Clipper to meet Churchill, making it the first plane to carry a sitting U.S. president while in office, years before the term Air Force One existed. 12 Clippers were ever built, but one, the California Clipper, became legend. After the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, it was stranded in New Zealand. The Pacific was too dangerous, so Pan Am gave the crew one bold order: fly the long way home. They had no maps for most of the route, no solid plan, and had to pass through war zones refueling in remote outposts. After nearly a month and 31,500 miles, they made it back to New York. Against all odds, the California Clipper became the first commercial plane to fly around the world. In 1937, the XB-15 became the largest and heaviest airplane in the U.S. Nicknamed Grandpappy, it was so massive that engineers could crawl inside the wings to make repairs while in the air. It was built as an experimental heavy bomber for the U.S. Army, designed to fly over 5,000 miles. It hit those goals and even set 2 world records, but it never saw combat. Boeing's Model 307 Stratoliner was the first commercial plane with a pressurized cabin, letting it cruise at 23,000 feet, above most storms. Only 10 were built, and the last one was restored after spending 20 years in the desert and now sits in a museum. Fun fact, Howard Hughes, billionaire, Hollywood director, and fearless aviator, flew around the world in just 3 days and 19 hours in 1938. He later bought a custom Stratoliner to break his own record. The flight never happened, but while the plane stayed grounded, his legacy kept flying. When the United States entered World War II, the demand for military aircraft exploded. The B-17 Flying Fortress was built for battle, designed to carry 8,000 pounds of bombs, and equipped with an enclosed flight deck for extra protection. Early models had 5 guns, but later versions carried up to 13 50 caliber machine guns. It earned its nickname. B-17s often returned from missions full of holes, missing tails, damaged wings, or flying on just one engine. One veteran even wrote to Boeing saying, "I'm glad to be alive. Thank you for making such a good airplane." Over 12,700 were built. They dropped over 640,000 tons of bombs on Nazi targets, delivering a devastating blow to Germany's war machine. General Karl Spaatz put it best, without the B-17, we may have lost the war. And Boeing wasn't done. A bigger giant was next. The B-29 Superfortress was one of the most advanced bombers of World War II. Bigger, faster, and deadlier than the B-17. With a range of 5,600 miles, 12 50 caliber machine guns, and a 20,000-pound bomb load, it was built for destruction. It even had remote-controlled gun turrets, technology far ahead of its time. The B-29 was used heavily against Japan. On one terrifying night, 334 superfortresses bombed Tokyo, killing an estimated 100,000 people. The sky turned to fire. Then came the unthinkable. On August 6, 1945, the B-29 Enola Gay dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima. 3 days later, Bockscar dropped another on Nagasaki. To this day, the B-29 is the only aircraft ever used to drop nuclear weapons in combat. But all that power came at a price. Developing and building the B-29 cost even more than the atomic bomb itself, more than the entire Manhattan Project. That's over $50 billion in today's money. In total, 3,970 superfortresses were built. They weren't just important, they were essential to winning the war and ending the deadliest conflict in American history. After the war, Boeing kept building bombers, the B-50 Superfortress, the sleek B-47 Stratojet, and the legendary B-52 Stratofortress, known as the Buff. Big, ugly, fat fella. It was designed to carry nuclear weapons across the globe, and it's still flying today. But the war was over, and demand for military planes collapsed. Boeing was hit hard. 70,000 workers lost their jobs. To survive, they turned back to commercial aviation. Their answer? The 377 Stratocruiser, a luxury airliner. Pan Am, then America's most iconic airline, jumped in, ordering 20 Stratocruisers, the biggest commercial deal of the time. But things didn't go as planned. Only 56 were ever built. The plane was stylish, but hard to fly. Engine and propeller issues led to deadly accidents, including a 1952 crash in the jungles of Brazil that killed all 50 people on board. Boeing needed something new, something fast, something revolutionary. Imagine telling your boss you'll do a smooth flyover, then pulling off a full barrel roll in a giant jet. That's exactly what pilot Tex Johnston did in 1955 with the Boeing 367-80, better known as the Dash 80. Built a year earlier, it was Boeing's bold version of the jet age, and they went all in, investing 2/3 of their post-war profits. It was a huge risk, but the Dash 80 flew over 1,600 test flights and proved one thing: the future of flying was jet-powered. And Tex's barrel roll? Boeing's bosses had no idea, and it must have left them in shock. He didn't just do it once, he rolled the jet twice. The crowd cheered, the press was amazed, and it probably became the boldest sales pitch in aviation history. And the story was far from over, because what came next would change air travel forever. Enter the Boeing 707, Boeing's first real jetliner and the plane that launched the jet age. It wasn't the first commercial jet, but it was the one that changed everything. Boeing President William Allen and his team were said to have bet the company on jet travel. Luckily, the gamble paid off. The 707 cruised at 600 miles per hour, flew 3,300 miles, and carried 194 passengers, a huge leap in 1957. It even cut transatlantic flights from 12 hours to just 6, making international travel mainstream. To beat rivals like Douglas and its DC-8, Boeing got smart, customizing 707s for specific airlines. Qantas, for instance, got long-range models with bigger engines. It was risky, but it worked. In 1960, Boeing added the smaller 720. It carried 156 passengers and was much cheaper to build. Then things got weird. The 720 was turned into the E-3 Sentry, a military version with a giant spinning radar dome. It looked strange, but it became a key player in both air defense and coordinating attacks. Between the 707 and 720, Boeing built over 1,000 planes. The jet age had officially begun, and Boeing was leading the charge. Next came the Boeing 727, designed for short routes and smaller airports. Airlines were split between wanting 2 or 4 engines, so Boeing picked 3, all mounted at the back. It became the only Boeing jet with 3 engines. It stood out for its design and how loud it was. The 727 was one of the loudest commercial jets ever made. Even with hush kits to reduce the noise, some Australian airports banned it for being too loud. Still, it was a massive hit. Boeing planned 250 but ended up building over 1,800. It became their best-selling plane at the time and the first commercial jet to top 1,000 sales. Then, one 727 was intentionally crashed for a Discovery Channel TV show. Filled with crash test dummies, it revealed, front row passengers were at the highest risk. Rear passengers had the best chance. The brace position worked, although it sometimes caused broken legs. Fun fact, the Boeing 727 had a built-in air stair that could open mid-flight. In 1971, a hijacker known as D.B. Cooper used it to escape. After demanding $200,000 and claiming to have a bomb, he parachuted out and vanished. He was never found, and the case became one of aviation's greatest mysteries. Boeing isn't just making passenger planes. When the space race began, it became one of NASA's key partners, helping build the Saturn V rocket that launched astronauts to the moon. It recently flew its first crewed Starliner mission to the ISS, but due to technical issues, NASA chose SpaceX's Dragon for the return. Boeing is also leading the SLS rocket project, designed to go beyond the moon and maybe one day to Mars. Boeing also plays a huge role in the military, building fighter jets like the F-15 Eagle, F/A-18 Super Hornet, and the AH-64 Apache, one of the most advanced attack helicopters ever made. Boeing also develops missiles, drones, and other systems that power the U.S. military.